here we go. Hey, Francesca, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Shelly?
I am doing so well. So this is so exciting. Francesca and I are besties from across the ocean, and we have decided to start this podcast for female entrepreneurs just like us, business owners who are working generally by themselves in a solo-owned business, but are really stepping up into their role as CEO. And it's a journey that we've been on for about, well, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. Francesca's been in the game for a good while now. And in being entrepreneurs, we've established this beautiful friendship as what we now call besties. And so we thought we would start this podcast to really share about our experiences in business and really just let you in on some of our conversations, with the hope that it will enrich your business and encourage you to start your own business, to run your business more effectively, and just have a whole lot more fun with it. So that's the whole idea of the podcast. At the moment, we're doing a season of it. It's an experiment. And so that is the topic of today's podcast. It's how to experiment in your business and why it's really important to experiment in your business. And if you need it, you have our permission to experiment. But before we get going with all of that, let's just say hello and introduce ourselves. I'm going to hand it over to Francesca. She can tell you a little bit more about what she's hoping to get out of this podcast and how she's hoping to serve you. And then Francesca, you can tell everyone a little bit about me. Tell them, give them all the dirt on Shelly.
Well, I am so excited to be doing this with you, Shelly. Shelly and I have built this really organic, beautiful friendship just by having our own businesses and figuring out how can we serve each other. And it has been an amazing collaboration. And so it just feels perfect that the next step for us would be this podcast. And I am just so excited to be here to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs and to help make this journey a lot simpler and a lot more fun, because it doesn't have to be lonely and it doesn't have to be really, really hard. So yeah, let me introduce Shelly a little bit. So Shelly is an incredible person, first of all. She is so generous and she is so kind. Her working title is a launch strategist. She is amazing at synthesizing information and creating really simple systems. But she also has an amazing superpower of copywriting. And she is so good at helping bring your voice out. It's something that she's helped me with. There are times when you really want to get to your audience and you feel like you don't have the words to say. And for me, it's kind of felt like I'm an awkward teenager just trying to figure it out. And Shelly has this really brilliant way of taking my passions and the words that I tell her and just turning it into magic so that it feels like I'm saying those words, but without all the mind drama of what do I say?
So Francesca is a life coach. She works with high achieving, really ambitious women who really want to make their mark in the world. And she really helps them to let go of all of these things that didn't serve them in the past. This idea of perfectionism, this idea of trying to be productive all the time and being a bit of a slave to it, this overschedule in your life because you want to fit everything in. She's helped me with all of those things. And she is just such an amazing life coach, also such an amazing heart for helping people, for serving people. And she's helped me big time in terms of my mindset when it comes to running my own business, but also just running my life. And she's helped me to recognize thoughts. And it sounds like both so simple and maybe so abstract, of like your thoughts. But she's shown me that my thoughts dictate how I'm going to show up in the world. And so it's by taking control of those thoughts that I can really like take control of my life. And it's really been an amazing journey with Francesca as my life coach, and sort of discovering those sides of things. So I'm so excited for her to help new and current entrepreneurs with their mindset, so that they can really show up in the strongest way, in the way that feels most aligned with who they are and the beautiful special gifts that they are bringing to the world. And Francesca's other superpower is her sense of community and connection. She is just a power connector. She loves finding oh, you should speak to this person and that person, and connecting people. It's just wonderful to watch. She's really like she works the room of the online entrepreneur space. So she's really, I'm just so excited also to be partnering up with you on this podcast, because you're just such a wonderful connector. And it really is the people that we surround ourselves with that dictate our success to so much, to such a high degree. So Francesca lives in Michigan, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the US. And just so if you're wondering about my accent, I am from Johannesburg in South Africa. So we're in two opposite hemispheres, and yet through the power of the internet we have connected. And so we hope to be connecting with so many more of you all through the world through this podcast. We're so excited about it.
Before we dive in, I just want to say to our listeners that you can kind of notice that we've already been bragging on each other, and I just hope that you feel that flavor in all of our episodes, because we love to celebrate people. We love to see the gifts in other entrepreneurs and to bring that forward and see how we can create this beautiful tribe of us thriving together.
Absolutely. We each have our zone of geniuses. And I often think of it as like an orchestra. Like everybody comes with their instruments and we put it all together in this beautiful symphony. With that said, let's dive into this idea of experimentation in your business. Now, you don't have to be a scientist to experiment in your business. And I think so many of us coming in, when my clients come to me, they often are saying, oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right, or like, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right tech platform to choose? Is this, it's all about like, oh, am I right? And the truth about that is, well, you don't know until you try. Because also what's right for me might not be right for Francesca, and might not be right for the next person. So what we have found in our businesses is this mindset of experimentation has been so helpful for us to keep moving forward. And the idea was first sort of introduced to me in a book I read called Range by David Epstein. And we'll put that in the show notes. We will get some show notes and I'll put a link to that. And in the book, he talks about keeping a small book, a book of small experiments. And that's also the key, that these little experiments need to be small, that they need to be ideas that you can test out in your business. And really, if you're taking it from a scientific mindset or point of view, you kind of want to just focus in on one or two ideas that you are testing at a time, and keep those relatively focused. And the idea is to go, you know what? There's no right or wrong here, but let's test it out, and let's not get too emotionally attached to the outcomes. We're just scientists. We're just practicing something. We're testing something out. So yeah, that for me is the whole idea of experimentation in your business. And there's also a lot of intention behind it. So we're kind of getting really playful. We're testing out this idea. But we're doing so not just in like a, oh, let's do anything we want to kind of thing, but we're taking something that's quite playful, and then we put in some intention and a little bit of science behind it. And I know this has been something that's really helped you in your business, Francesca. Do you want to tell us about what experimenting in your business has meant for you?
Yeah, of course. So, I think that experimentation is great for so many different reasons. And for me, experimentations actually started way before I had my business. And it's just made my life better. Um, People sometimes ask me, how did you achieve things like losing 115 pounds? And really, it came back to this idea of experimentation. Whether that was experimenting with thoughts that would really help move me forward, or with just seeing if things would work or not. And my favorite part of the whole experimentation process is actually the analysis part. Because when you analyze, and I just have to be like totally upfront, I am such a numbers girl. I'm very creative as
I'm
well.
not.
I love math. I think it's beautiful, which I'm sure there are a lot of people who would not resonate with that.
Nerd alert.
Um, well, my dad's a mathematician, so I grew up with that, and for me, the numbers tell so much. It's like there's this richness of data. I don't know, the idea. It's like the richest soil, and it just gives so much nutrients. And in my business, when I do experiments, it really cuts some of that mindset drama. It shows me like what is actually going on. It's showing me what's actually working in my business. It's showing me what's not working in my business, and it helps guide me in the process of what I should be doing differently. It's like yeah, just like it creates this path, it creates direction for me, which always feels so good.
Yeah, totally. And like, you know, there's so much, I think there's already so much emotion, so much just mindset drama that we bring into our businesses, because as solopreneurs, we're bringing ourselves into it. So like, there's a lot of putting ourselves out there when it comes to our businesses. And so to get a little bit analytical about this aspect of our businesses, I think is so powerful, because it detaches us from these emotional outcomes that we can sometimes bring to the whole thing of like, well, if this doesn't work, then I'm a failure. And like, if this, if my business doesn't make this amount of money, then I'm not a good businesswoman. You know, all of this like mindset stuff that crops up. And often because like then in the absence of being intentional and being experimental and comparing ourselves from a beginning point to an end point in our own businesses, we start comparing ourselves to other people and then going, oh my goodness, well, I'm not that person. So, and she's doing so amazingly well. And, I think when we experiment, we're experimenting with ourselves in our own business, and it's just a test. So go, well, if that test like failed, it doesn't mean we are bad business people or we made a bad decision. We were just testing something out, and so now we got information. And so I think you're so right that the data, that analysis that you do afterwards is so important. And I mean, like, yeah, I'm totally like hating on the numbers, but it's so important to do that, to get connected with those numbers. And even for me, who's not a numbers person, I did in a mastermind that I'm a part of, we did a mid-month check-in, and we kind of had 3 areas that we were focusing in on. So in a way, that's a bit of an experiment for me of like focusing in on these 3 areas. And so in the mid-month check-in, what we did is we kind of gave a traffic light symbol of like, are we red, yellow, or red, orange, or green, And so to kind of go like, where are we at? And I was kind of going through my month, as I'm sure a lot of you are at the moment. It's all just feels a little bit chaotic, a little bit scattered. And I did that mid-month check-in, and I was like, green to orange. It was like one of them was like a little bit in between, but it was like tending towards green. And then the third was also green. And I was like, hey, I'm actually doing better than my mind drama was telling me I was doing, and by being intentional, by kind of setting those experiments for the month of like, and my experiment is to be more playful. And this podcast is one example of that, is to, and in all of those areas, I'm nailing it. And it's only because I've set up that as an experiment that I can actually look back and go, yeah, you know what? Doing okay. Like in terms of overall productivity, like maybe not as good as I kind of want to be, but was that the point of this month? Was that my intention? Was that my focus? Was that my experiment? No. And you can hear my kiddos downstairs. So for those of you who don't know this part of my life, I have two wonderful boys, and they are 6 and 3. And I am a homeschooling mom, so we homeschool them. I think, Francesca, that's also really important for people to know, is like, why should you experiment? And I think you've mentioned, taking the mindset drama. Is there any other things that shine out to you of like why it's important to experiment in your business, and why this approach or mindset is a good one?
Yeah. Well, I think it really does show you what's working and what's not working. And for so many entrepreneurs that are just starting out, myself included at times, like it can feel really overwhelming and you can feel really confused. But when you sit down and you choose to do an experiment and then you analyze it, it really gives you a direction to move forward. And part of what I see as such a huge benefit of experiments is that idea of starting small. You brought up like comparisonitis, and for me in the beginning stages, I one day woke up and realized, oh my gosh, I've been comparing myself to entrepreneurs that have been doing this for 10 years. 10 years. So it was really, it's been really helpful to look at how can I start smaller. And so I'd love to hear from you in that area of like what does that look like?
Yes, and starting small. So I'm a big fan. My husband is a software programmer, and they're in the software development industry. I think because like the world is your oyster, you can develop anything you want to. They've had to dial it back in. And so I'm sure some of you have heard of this concept of a minimum viable product, or MVP. And so your minimum viable product is like, there's just the smallest product that you can put out there. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles. It's just going to kind of test, is this something that people want and people would pay for? My opinion is, when setting up an MVP experiment, is that it should be something that you're going to sell. Because I think part of the test, part of the experiment is, are people going to buy this from you? But I'm not saying that every experiment must be like a money-based thing. You could experiment with engagement, with even just a feeling. You could experiment with a number of different things. But if you kind of experimenting with a product and going, will people buy this? Then you have to go, well, are they going to hand over their money for it? So what I'm doing at the moment is putting together a course that will give you a template of a sales page that you can just go and plug and play your information, and then you can sell like a 1-hour masterclass like Francesca's done. You must tell everyone about that. You could sell an ebook. You could sell like a guided meditation or a series of audio tracks that you help people through. The idea being that it's like a really simple, it's not going to have all the bells and whistles. It's just solving one aspect of your client's problem. So that's an example of an experiment. So tell us about your email, your tech mindset masterclass, Francesca, because I think that's a really good example of an experiment. And maybe you want to share some other examples of experimentation that you've done in your biz.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. So, um, with my clients, I started hearing from them that email was really getting in the way of them living their best lives. They were just feeling super overwhelmed by it. They'd sit down and it would just kind of derail their entire day. And it was so fascinating to me because this used to be a big problem area for me. And I thought I was the only one. So to hear that there were other women out there that were really struggling with this, I was like, ooh, this sounds like something that would be really fun to dive into. So um, I decided, let's experiment with this. Let's see if this is something that people are really interested in, where my expertise could meet a need. And with Shelly's guidance, we decided let's keep this small. So I think as entrepreneurs, especially, we can be big, big visionaries, right? And so we want to like run with all of the ideas. And this is why it's so great to experiment. Um, and so we decided to just go with a master class. And it was just so much fun. And I have some ideas about creating a course later down the line. But it's been so exciting and so fulfilling to know that um, there are ideas inside of me that literally can solve a problem for someone, and you can just get it out there. It doesn't have to be months or years of work.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the huge benefits of experimenting in your business is that forward action, that momentum, and people are drawn to that action that you're taking. So like if you wait to perfect, I think also the sort of range of things that you could offer your people and the ways you could help your people. And like, for example, Francesca, there's so many ways that she as a life coach can help her people, but she zoned in on like email to go, yes, email, like this is an issue. And I mean, she could looked at it in the broader tech front, but I mean, there's so many mindset things she can dive into. There's a whole lot of ways that she can help her people. But in that masterclass, she zoned in on one really particular problem that her audience was having. And yeah, I mean, she ran the masterclass live. We recorded it. It was an hour-long masterclass. She nailed the timing. That was so amazing. And she now is offering that, like with the worksheets. She's got a little worksheet that goes along with it. She's got a guided visualization. And what was that thing? Oh, the mantra, the affirmation cards. So she kind of started with the 1 hour workshop, like masterclass. And then she could add a few little things onto it, like if she had time, and like in the end, it worked out that she had a bit of time and you could add those things on. But the kind of minimum viable product was that masterclass and that one problem that you were solving. So I think that was a really good example of an experiment of going like, let's put it out there and let's see what kind of interest there is. I think in terms of the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty of how to set up an experiment, you kind of want to get a hypothesis. And my kids watch a show called Dinosaur Trains, where the one dinosaur always comes up with a hypothesis. And they say, a hypothesis is an idea you can test. And so that's all it is. It's just an idea, one of these amazing ideas that I'm sure you are inundated with, that you can actually test. So you want to set it up in a way that's like there's going to be some numbers or some kind of data, even if it's like as I say, it could be money, it could be engagement, it could be some kind of way that you can test and get an answer to your question. And as I said, focus on like one or two things that you test in at a time, and then analyze the data. So you can analyze the numbers, but then you can although this is getting you out of your sort of mindset drama, I think, and Francesca, you can speak to this, I think an important part of the analysis is also, how do you feel? And how do you feel in your body physically as you carrying out this experiment? So like maybe in your masterclass, like, how did you actually feel about it? What was that energy as well? So it might not always or it might not only be about the numbers. So it's also those feelings, but yeah, looking at those feelings as a scientist, as an observer.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that, because I love to usually ask myself questions at the end when I'm like doing some analysis too. And I just journal about it, and those reflection questions can give me so much information. So with my first launch, I realized after doing reflection that while like the numbers were working out and I felt really encouraged by that, during the reflection, I realized that I tried to cram it all into a short period of time, and I just felt rushed. And so that has really helped me set up new priorities for launches after that, to realize, okay, yes, a deadline is super helpful because it makes sure I actually get the thing out into the world. However, like, it's important for me to create some white space to make sure that I'm feeling really good about it. Really
Yes.
good about it. Um, yeah, I'd love to like talk about a tool that one of my clients has been using. But first, like, Shelly, can you just share like what a couple of examples of what a hypothesis might look like?
Okay. So there's like, you can put your hypothesis like in a sentence. And it's basically something that you want to test. So all right, so let's just talk a little bit about the examples of hypothesis and how you can actually put together a hypothesis. So some examples are like, if I offer a lead magnet, I'll get a 40% increase in email list signups. So it's an if statement. So it's like starts with a if I do this. So there's like an action and then an outcome of what that outcome will be. So another example could be, if I offer a workshop, I'll get so many signups and so many new leads for my coaching program. So you could be testing out a new marketing strategy. You could be testing out a product. For example, the digital product that I'm launching is, if like the experiments I'm actually doing is, if I offer a small digital product, I will be able to sell a certain percentage more than I was in the past. So, and then I think also just talking to the feelings experiments that Francesca was talking about as well is, if I use Trello as a project management system, I will feel less rushed during my launch. So, you could experiment with different tools there, and the outcome could be a feeling of how you actually want to feel at the end of the launch. How those for examples, Francesca, does that sound good to you?
I think that's perfect. And it's really interesting because this is where experiments can really start breaking up that mind drama that you're having. Because if you're going and you're looking at, okay, if I, and now I'm going to forget the hypothesis that you said. What was the one about the email?
If I develop a lead magnet, I will increase my email subscribers by 40%.
Yeah. Yeah. So you might be feeling like nobody wants what I have to offer. Nobody's listening. And you go and you do this lead magnet. And then let's say you promo it. And you notice that your email subscribers, maybe they don't go all the way up to 40%, but maybe they go up by 20%. this is where you're like, oh my goodness, it's working.
Yes.
People want what I have to offer. They're listening,
Hmm.
right? And so this is where we can like really start finding evidence of how things are working, and
Yes.
that can really make us feel more confident.
Yeah, totally. And I think also it's to go, you know what, if it totally flatlines and like nobody's jumping up for this lead magnet, you can then start asking some questions of like, like, do I need to do some more promotion? Do I need more visibility? And is the lead magnet itself not the right thing to do? But you know what you're not saying? No one wants to listen to me. No one wants my stuff. You're making it more scientific. You're putting it outside of yourself and going, like, let's see if it doesn't work. It's not that I'm the failure. It's that maybe that lead magnet is a dud, and that's okay. Like, of course you also want to put a bit of a time limit on this experiment, because you don't want to go like, throwing new things out into the world all the time and then go, oh no, it's not working, like after a few days.
For experiments, like how long should people experiment before they, say, oh, maybe this didn't work out and I'm going to try something new?
Yeah, I think initially, yeah, set yourself an experiment time. I used to advocate like a 90-day, like a quarter of the year to, try something out. I will say it depends on the experiment, but at the moment, like for me, 90 days is a lifetime. So like I'm cutting back and look at, with my focus on playfulness and minimum viable product, I'm like 30 days, and let's see in a month, like what happens in 30 days. But I'm almost using the time container to dictate what my experiment is. So it's like, you don't want to go and experiment, like to say that you're going to create and launch a 5-module online course in 30 days. No, like that is too much, even for the most productive of us out there. So you can also use time as your container, and then like craft your experiment or your hypothesis to fit that container. So if you do want to see some quick results, then like narrow it down, and you can even do like a week. So go, well, this week I want to like, maybe you can say, like Francesca teaches, of like attaching a habit, a new healthy self-care habit, to something that you're already doing, like brushing your teeth. So it's going, straight after I brush my teeth, I'm going to do a meditation. So your experiment for that week could be, if I do my meditation straight after brushing my teeth, I will meditate every day of this week. So, and then see if that works for you to get your meditation habit going. So that could be like a week. So it all depends on the experiment. And I could say, although I said, in your business, like focusing on 1 or 2 experiments at a time, just for your own sanity, like you can bring this into your lifestyle, your self-care as well, and then frame the experiments according to, yeah, you can go one way or the other. Like either look at the time and say, what can I do in a week, and like set up the experiment as such. Or you can say, all right, I've got this big goal. I want to launch this like 5-module online course, so I'm going to do that in a 90-day period, and then launch it, and then get the data from it. But yes, I think also very importantly is to give it enough space after. So like if you've launched the online course, before you give up on the idea, go and give it some time, maybe then experiment. Like if you've got the online course, for example, experiment then with other promotional ways of visibility, of like maybe offering a special or something like that. But go and experiment with a few other things before you like toss out the whole online course, for example. So yeah, like again, I can't give you a time period. Like, how does that sound to you? Like,
Yeah, I love that. Typically I tell people 30, 60, or 90 days. And
mm,
I love, that you just said that like people have the answers within themselves. And so like listen to your intuition on this, but also like give yourself something that you can really commit to, something that feels achievable, and something that you're like, okay, like I'm committing to doing this for this time period, and just dive in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and stick to that experiment. Don't keep changing it up and like, oh, yeah, stick to it so that you can actually analyze it objectively, that you can separate, you don't have that mind drama coming in, because I think it's when the mind drama hits that's when you start, oh no, I'm just going to give up on the whole idea. So you want to actually say no, like rational me has committed to this experiment for this amount of time, so we're going to see it through. I'd love to now dive into an experimental mindset, and like, because I think when you focus in on experimentation, your mindset automatically changes. And for me, one of those things is playfulness, of like, let's play around with the idea of a podcast. Let's see what happens with it. I feel like when we're experimenting, there's a spaciousness. There's like, yeah, that we're being intentional, and we're looking at the numbers, and we're getting all scientific and nerdy, but at the same time it creates space and it creates creativity. And yeah, I just feel like a lot more playful when I'm experimenting with things. So I'd love you to talk also a little bit about the mindset behind experimentation, and if you wouldn't mind sharing about your triumph when you won the coaching dojo games. Francesca, I will tell you that she won this huge coaching competition, but I think just being playful and going about it with a mindset of like, let's learn, let's discover things. And I do believe that experimentation was a big part of that mindset. So tell us a little bit about that, Francesca.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yeah, so November of 2019, I was invited to participate in what's called the Coaching Adventure Games, as part of the Samurai Dojo. And the Samurai Dojo, the whole goal is, it's a community of coaches that are looking to become more masterful. Um, and so this game was just an opportunity to go be around other coaches, and they were like, no matter what happens, you're going to build relationships with other coaches, you're going to become a better coach. So I was like, 100% I'm in. Now, I don't think I realized how competitive I was until I got married. And I talk about this quite a bit, if you've ever been in my world and read my content, but my husband and I play board games, and um, traditionally I tend to play board games. I mean, I love to connect, right? So there's that too, but like, it's really about winning for me. But through being married to my amazing husband, he approaches games so differently. He comes and he's like, how can I be curious with this? Oh, that card looks really cool. Let me just try it. And I've tended to come to board games of like, you're teaching me a new game. I'm feeling really overwhelmed because you're telling me the rules, and I feel like I need to know them all right off the bat. And this has been such an amazing thing to bring into my business, right? Because so many of us have these perfectionistic mindsets
Mm-hmm.
and ruts, right?
Mm.
So we feel like we have to have it all figured out in the beginning. So with the coaching adventure games, I just really came in with the intention to just get to know other coaches and to become a better coach. I didn't have this, like, I wasn't like, I have to win the coaching adventure games. And so it was like this really cool experiment that I didn't even know I was a part of at the time, of like, is it possible to be successful without the perfectionism?
Ah,
And
which is your hypothesis.
Right. And I would say like 100%. I think I already knew that inside of me, but the cool thing about being a life coach and being a human being is that we can always up level. And so, we can have success in our lives, and yet we're still learning and we're still growing. I'm sure that you would say that about being a copywriter and a launch strategist.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And just being an entrepreneur, that's what I love about being an entrepreneur. It's like you're never totally all there, and like who wants to be, like this is just it's so fun. And I think that the experimentation can just channel that, so it doesn't feel scattered, but that you can feel focused. But I just love how you went in there with an intention of growth and development, and yeah, like, spoiler alert at that, but like Francesca went on to win the games. I think when she started seeing that this kind of playfulness, this kind of gamification, just development growth mindset was really paying off, that's when she could actually start getting tactical and go, all right, now this is like, I remember you saying afterwards, of like, I think you were in about fourth place, and you were like, you know what, I could actually win this. And at that point, I think you then started to strike and like go and find all the games that you could get the most points on, and there were fast action bonuses. It was so much fun. And I think that's the thing, we want to be having fun in our businesses. It doesn't all have to be drudgery, otherwise we'd go and get a real job and get the steady paycheck every month. So yeah, you want it to be fun, and I think that's such a big part of this experimental mindset of going, this can be playful, this can be like a game, this can feel like I don't need to have all the answers, I'm figuring that out on the journey. And all of that is so helpful in being a business owner, and as you say, being a human being as well. It just makes life so much more exciting. I'll also just talk to gamification in my homeschooling as well, because I think when we started homeschooling, I was like, okay, get the curriculum, like let's do school at home. And then I started reading up, and I've come across this wonderful site. There's so many resources, really, but the whole idea of game schooling and teaching your kids through playing board games and card games, and also lots of outside play and free play. And in doing that, there's just only one way to go, and that's to learn and actually love learning. And you know what? When you get to that point, like the sky's the limit for you. Nobody has to force you to do anything ever again. And I think that's the mindset, that's the spirit we want to bring in with this experimentation in your business, because it's so powerful in your business as it is with learning when you're a kid, and even professional development as an adult. Like it's so powerful to go, let's try it out, let's experiment, and we learn as we go along. But like sitting behind your computer, and holding yourself up, sure, there's a time and place for that, but it's only through actually taking action that I think we are going to get the results that we're desiring in our businesses. And by trying things out, giving yourself permission to experiment, and then what I say is, it's like it's the school of hard knocks, but it's fun. I don't like the hard knocks parts. It's like learning from the school of hard knocks without getting the hard knocks, so you're learning through action and through play. Like the kids, they say learn through play. And for us as entrepreneurs, I think we need to bring more of that playfulness back into our businesses. So that's really what this whole podcast experiment is about as well. So yeah, I think for us, that's the mindset that you got to bring to this experimentation in your business.
I love that, Shelley. I love that so much. And you were talking about the school of hard knocks. Well, there's this film here, and I think it's called The School of Rock.
Oh yes, I love school.
But it totally reminds me of that. It's like this guy, I think he gets laid off and then he ends up becoming a substitute teacher, and he like really doesn't want to be there. But it ends up he turns into this amazing teacher who teaches, music to these kids, but it becomes all about play. And
Mm.
these kids that they were not good and at music, and I'm pretty sure they might have had some behavioral problems too. Like then at the end you see them like create this whole show, and they're really good, but like they got there from play. And I love this like idea of curiosity, of like how can we be more curious in our businesses, because when we are coming from a place of I'm not enough, I have to figure out the right thing, where are my people, all of those questions that can just be really limiting. Like if we do a tune in with our bodies, like what are you feeling? You're probably feeling really rigid. You're probably feeling really tense. Like I have to figure out the best social media strategy. Um,
Yeah, I have to
you
have
may
it all figured out, like a
yeah,
concrete plan. Yeah.
exactly. You might even feel like, oh, I feel depressed, or I just like want
Mhm.
to crawl into a hole, right?
Yeah.
Um, so when you start noticing that in your body and you start realizing that these are the thoughts that you're having, like if we think about what kind of actions we take when we are feeling this way, it's usually going to be no action
Yes.
or
Yeah.
very inconsistent action,
Mm.
because there's no belief there. There's no belief in ourselves. There's no belief in our service. There's no belief in our clients that they want what we have to offer, that they're ready to dive in and take action and get results now. And so I love what you said there about action. I have this little sticker in my office that says "Action Cures Fear." I'm not sure who came up
Mm.
with that first, but I have to say that taking action has been the thing has grown my confidence the fastest.
Yeah.
Like, you want something that's going to get rid of imposter syndrome? It's taking action.
Do the thing, get in front of the camera or the microphone. And I mean, it doesn't have to be like in people's faces. It can be, yeah, just like go and do, like with this digital product of mine. I was like, how am I going to do it? And I had a whole bunch of questions of will people want it this way, and with this tech platform and all of this. And I just dived into it, and I started putting it together, and all the time thinking minimum viable product, like no more bells and whistles. And then I came up with this idea of, well, let's put it together as a template like this, and then this is what people will want. And it's been so exciting to like now, bring it to you and to other people, just giving them a sneak peek of it. And they're like, this is amazing, this is going to be so helpful. But it started with me actually going, all right, let's just try some things. And even the video that's going to accompany this course, I clicked on Loom. If you don't have Loom, everybody go and get it. It's just such an amazing tool to record your screen, and you can just talk as you're doing things. And sometimes that's just a really good way for you to talk out your process, or and actually do the thing and then go and listen back to it. Because then again, I was like, oh, what's my structure for my course? And like, I love this. And like, I'm an online teacher. I love teaching. And yes, I was like, oh, where do I start? You know what? Just like go and click record on Loom, talk it out. And then I listened back to it and I was like, okay, all right, this belongs here, this belongs there. And I then was able to like put together the outline. So I think in taking the action first, and then you can actually go back, and that's also part of analysis, of going to listen back to it and going, all right, that's actually how it belongs together. And so now I will go and re-record those videos. But the quickest way to do that was recording videos in the first place. To get them down, then you can analyze them, and then you've actually got some answers to work with. And like to your points earlier, that's when you can make decisions in your business. If you've got some, if you're moving forward, and that's when you'll be out of that place of, am I doing this right? Like, will people like this? Or lots of questions. If you're taking actions, you've got answers, and that's when you can actually start, making progress and moving forward. So that's really what I'd like to encourage people with today, is to set yourself the smallest little experiment that you can to move yourself forward. Take action towards that. As we say, whether it's by recording a Loom video just for yourself, or doing a Facebook Live, or going to ask a bunch of, or a few of your best friends for some advice, talking to some ideal clients. Take some action to move you forward, and you'll start getting those answers to all these questions that can create this super mind drama and comparisonitis and all the bad things that we don't want. So take that forward action. Just try it out, like, experiment, and be intentional, so that you can come back. Because if you're like me, you start an experiment, then you forget about it. So have a nice little place, whether it's and we didn't talk tools, but you mentioned journaling, Francesca. A bullet journaling is something that we both love, and that we want to talk about in a future episode. But you could put together your experiments in a bullet journal, or in a Google Doc, or something like that, that you can just make notes of what you're experimenting with, and then that you can actually analyze it afterwards. So I think that's what I'd like to encourage everyone with. I just want to talk about a few questions now that could pop up, that people are going to be like, what about best practice? What about when people say, like, do it this way, like, learn from all my mistakes, so that you don't have to learn from all of this. Like, and there is totally a place for best practice. There is totally a place for the wheel, and not having to reinvent the wheel. So that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about experimentation. There are certain best practices in business that you really should just follow, where the road's been paved before you, and, like, it's cool, like, go for it. But when we're experimenting, when we're having these questions of, like, what is right for me and for my business, the only answer can come from within you. And so that's when experimentation happens. So it's not to say that you're going to experiment with everything in your business. Certain things, best practice, just follow, like, so-called best practice. But sometimes there's a place for questioning that best practice. Is it really the best practice for you? And that's when I challenge you, go and run an experiment. I can't tell you if it's best practice or not. Only you can know. And I think, Francesca, I'd like to also just ask you, like, how do you respond, like, when an experiment so-called fails? Like, if things didn't work out the way you were planning, you tried that card in that board game, and you lost. Can you just talk to us in terms of mindset of, like, how do you respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I have to be honest, and not always well. Not always well. But here's some of the tools that I've developed, and I love encouraging my clients to do. And first of all, when I am doing analysis, I'm always asking, what did I do well?
Mm-hmm.
Because even if your experiment, you feel like it was a total flop, and you're like, no one signed up for my webinar or whatever, you can always find areas that you did really great at.
Absolutely.
Maybe no one showed up, but, like, you had the bravery to get it out in the world. These things are really worth celebrating. And they'll also start showing you, like, oh, like, I took the first step of maybe a 10-step process. And so it's not about the fact that I failed. It's just that I'm in the middle of this journey, of this process. Another question I really love to ask myself is, where was I before? because so many times, like, we're looking, again, 10 steps ahead, and we're comparing that to where we are now. But if you go back and you look at like where you were, I can guarantee you that you have a whole list of areas that you've grown and you probably didn't even notice, or you've forgotten about them. And so I really love to take note of those things, and those are the things that like build me back up and remind me, like, it's that separating, again, what you were talking about earlier, Shelley. Like, this is just data, this is just numbers, this is just information. This has no bearing on who I am as a human being. This has
Mhm.
no bearing on who I am as a CEO of my business. I might start feeling like it has a bearing. I might start feeling like I suck as a business owner, right? Like, those are all normal feelings. But when we start separating and we're like, oh, what did I do well at? What can I celebrate? And actually going out there and celebrating, right? Like, I love celebration, and reframing failure, because it's necessary in order to be successful. Like, you have to fail, you have to learn from your mistakes, and so, like, yeah, like, learning to change your response to yourself. So with me and my husband with board games, I'm learning to rewire some of the, perhaps the self-talk that's coming up in the midst of, oh, I shouldn't have taken that card. Why did I do that? Right? Like, none of that is productive. It's not helpful. And it's not very loving to ourselves. And if we're going to be the best version of ourselves as CEOs, like, we need to be our best advocate. So those are some of the ways that I respond to that, is seeing how I'm succeeding, and and learning to laugh about it, to, like, just, again, bring that curiosity in and be like, huh, well, this didn't go the way I planned it was going to go, but I wonder, like, what if I did it differently this way? Like, how would that affect it? um just getting really curious with questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love the reframing of failure. Like, I know you also talk about this sort of report card mindset that we have of like pass or fail, of like, did you get an A or an F? And like, we're not at school anymore. We can just like leave that behind. Like, that is not serving anybody. So I love what you said there of like reframing that failure, looking for the success. And yeah, totally love, like, this is step 1 of 10. Like, cool, I'm on the journey. Like, I bought my ticket and I'm on the journey. So like, we can't discount that at all. And I think, yeah, like learning and seeing those things, because also there's surprising things that you weren't targeting in your experiments, but these happy surprises that came along just because you were taking action. So it's pausing and it's reflecting on that as part of your experimental process or experimentation process. It's pausing. When you do that, you can actually identify those happy little surprises and go, where was I, like, 3 months ago? And because 3 months, especially at this point in time, is a long time. I mean, I was looking back on 1 month and I was like, oh my goodness, was that only at the beginning of the month? So yeah, I think allowing that space to intentionally try something, to look back and then reflect on all the goodness that came out of the experiments, what you would do differently next time. It is going to be so powerful in your business. So everybody, go and tell us what your next experiment is. And before we get our official Francesca and Shelley's show hashtag, our hashtag and our handles on Instagram and all the official stuff, we'll just be called the Francesca and Shelley Show for now. And you can go and follow us. I'm at Shelley Smith Creative on Instagram, and tell everyone where they can follow you, Francesca, where they can go and tell us about the experiments that they are going to do in their business. Tell us where they can follow you.
Yeah, so it's at Francesca Waltansky on Instagram. So FrancescaWoltanski. I figure I spell it because my name is, pretty unique.
Yeah. It's not a Smith. So yeah, there we go, everybody. So yeah, go and follow us on Instagram, and you can our websites are, we'll put them in the show notes, but I'm ShellySmithCreative.com. Francesca is FrancescaWoltansky.com, and you can go and have a look there, and we will make sure that there's some show notes that come along with this first inaugural episode of the Francesca and Shelly Show. Name to be advised. What's it? Working title at this point. But I hope everybody has had fun. Francesca, thank you so much. I've had so much fun chatting to you and like inviting all of these people who are going to be listening to the show into our Biz Bestie chat. And we're looking forward to episode 2.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thank you so much, Shelly. This has been a blast.